Hello, AP Econ students, and welcome back to Module 6. Today in Module 6, which is part of Unit 2, we will be discussing the supply curve. The goal today is to understand the basic premise of the supply curve, to draw the supply curve, understand the law of supply, and then also the shifts in supply. So we're going to look at there will be, as we've talked about before, um, with demand, there will be things that we talk about a change in quantity supplied versus a change in supply. So we're going to talk about things that will slide up and down the supply curve and things that will shift the supply curve. Now, remember, as we think about the supply curve, we have to think differently than we did in Module 5. Module 5, we thought about the demand curve. We thought about the demand curve as consumers, and that's pretty easy for us as consumers to think about that. But when it comes to supply, we have to start to think like a producer. We have to look at a different angle or a perspective that many of us will have difficulties looking at because we're so used to being consumers. So we're going to look at it from the perspective of the producer, the supplier of the product. So, what is supply? Supply is at different prices, the producer's willingness and ability to produce at different prices. Let me say that again. The willingness and an ability to produce at different price levels. Now we know that the producers are profit driven. They're driven at profit. They want to make more money. Where when we thought about demand, the consumers were about saving money. So in the demand curve, we know it was downward sloping to the right because as prices went down, the consumer, wanted to buy more. But now we have to think like a producer. So they want to make profits. So as price increases, the quantity producers make increases. As price falls, the quantity producers make falls. So the law of supply would be the idea that if the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up. My bad, right there. And if the price goes down, the quantity supplied goes down. So when we think about the graph, we're looking at a graph with, the price on the vertical and quantity on the horizontal. It will be upward sloping to the right. Will be the supply curve. Okay, so that's why we see they have an incentive to produce more at higher prices. So, for example, if I were to, if you own a lawnmower and you're willing to mow lawns, how many lawns would you be willing to mow at different prices? So at $1, you might go, Psh, I'm not going to sell any, right? Or I'm not going to mow any lawns for $1, right? $5, maybe your own if your parents pay you $5. Um, at $20, well, heck, I might be willing to do 5 lawns if they're not too big, right? Well, what about $50? Well, heck, I'll try to mow as many as I can at $50 a lawn. $100, I will do as many. Heck, I'll try to maybe do 20 lawns a day. And at $1,000, man, if I could do 50 lawns a day, that would be awesome. Now, I don't know if I have the capabilities of that, but as you can see, as we want to uh, as the price goes up, we're willing to mow more lawns. Okay. And that shows that relationship of the supply schedule. All right. So you can see as the price went up, the amount of lawns you're willing to cut dramatically increases. So if we were going to graph as we did in the demand curve in previous module, we looked at milk. Well, let's look at milk again. So using the demand schedule we have here on the left, we can see as the price is $1, the producer is willing to supply 10 gallons. But as the price goes up, it's willing to produce more and more. So you get this upward sloping to the right supply curve. Okay. Now remember, going from $2 point at 20 to $3 and at quantity 30, that slide right there, that slide going from this point to this point, that is an increase in quantity supplied. Remember, whenever we go to the right, it's an increase. Whenever we go to the left, it's a decrease. And it doesn't matter whether it's a supply or demand curve. Anytime we go to the right, the quantity goes up. Anytime we go to the left, the quantity goes down. Okay. And if we go from this point to this point, once again, it's an increase in price, increasing quantity supplied. But if we go the reverse, if we go slide down this way, obviously we're going sliding down into the left. Left means a decreasing quantity supplied. But what if there's new and more productive milking machines? That's not a change in price, is it? That means that there's more productivity. Hmm, that's innovation, isn't it? Well, innovation, if we remember from Unit 1, and we talked about the production possibility frontier, and didn't we say this is for producers producing two products, right? And we said if there's innovation, the curve could shift outward if there's innovation for both, or even for one, we might see that innovation where they're able to produce more. Interesting. I wonder what would happen if we have an innovation. Well, if the prices don't change, what we'll see is that at every price level, we're going to be willing to produce more goods because of that innovation. And therefore, that innovation will shift the supply curve to the right. So, this here is an example of an increase in supply, not an increase in quantity supplied, an increase in supply. Okay, so this is an increase or a shift right in the supply curve. Right, so this is a change in supply, not a change in quantity demanded. Remember, going from, let's say, point A to point B, this, all right, going from A to B is an increase in quantity supplied. But going from A to, let's say, C, that's an increase in supply because there was no price change. Okay, so we should make sure that we understand. I don't know why these lines, these extra lines were drawn. So this is an increase in supply. Okay, the price didn't change, but there is more milk being produced. But wait, what if the price for dairy cows increases drastically? They think, what is a dairy cow to milk? That's an input. So that's an outside factor. So let's think about that. If it costs me more to buy a cow, so let's say I have $1,000, and every year I buy cows with my $1,000. If $1,000 this year, and the cows are $50 a piece, I can buy 20 cows, and I can get 20. Uh, I can get 20 cows worth of milk. But if the price next year goes to $100 a cow, and I only have $1,000, now I can only buy 10 cows. So now I can only produce 10 cows worth of milk. Okay. So if we see that happening, what will happen at every quantity? If the prices don't change, at every quantity we're going to produce less milk. So therefore, we're going to see a shift left in the supply curve, which is a decrease in the supply curve. So once again, this is a decrease in supply. We're shifting left. Okay. Once again, please remember, all right, and I'll say this again and again and again, there is a difference between a change in quantity supplied versus a change in supply. Remember, a change in supply is a shift, and a change in quantity supplied is because we have a change in price that led to that change in quantity supplied. So that's a slide on the exact same curve. So there are 6 determinants of supply. I believe your book specifically talks about 5, because I don't believe they talk about the government actions, the taxes and subsidies, which I will. But the 6 determinants are government actions, which is taxes and subsidies. Now, most people know what taxes are, and I put subsidies here just to make sure we're clear what a subsidy is. A subsidy is when the government subsidizes and gives money to businesses to help them increase production. Right now, we're going through COVID, and we can see that the government has subsidized many big pharmaceutical companies to help offset the cost to find the cure for COVID. Okay, so that would be an example of a subsidy. Then we have prices or availability of inputs. So this is land, labor, capital, raw materials, technology, innovation, opportunity cost. And that I'll explain that in a minute here, but that is essentially comparing if I am one firm and I produce two different products. If the price of one of the products goes up, we know that I want to produce more of that product that the price is going up, then I'm going to produce less of the other product that the price isn't changing. Then there's expectations of future profits. Now we had expectations in demand as a determinant of demand, but expectations for consumers was to buy when prices are low. Well, producers are the exact opposite. They want to sell when prices are high. So that is the exact opposite. And then the number of sellers that are in the market. So I'm going to go through and show each one of these. So I use the acronym GI-TOES, GI-TOES. So we're going to do G here first, which is government involvement. So let's say we have the supply curve here, and we'll label them. So we have, oh wow, price, quantity, quantity. And let's say the government increases taxes on the firm, and down here they'll decrease taxes on the firm. So if they increase taxes on the firm, that means the firm has less money and they will see a decrease in supply. If the government lowers taxes on the firm, that means the firm has more money to buy more raw materials and resources and hire more labor, then that will be an increase in supply. All right, this will be an increase in supply, and this one was a decrease. Now, if we look at subsidies, if we increase subsidies or if we decrease subsidies, so let's draw those out. Always label everything. Always label everything. Try my best. Sometimes I forget. So let's say if they increase subsidies, that means they're giving firms money. That will be an increase in supply. That will shift them to the right. So that's an increase in supply. If they decrease subsidies, like they give them less money, that could lead to a decrease in supply, Oops. And so here, just under G, under government, you see 4 different shifts in the supply curve. So this is government involvement. The next one is I, and I is input costs. Input costs. So we're talking about land, labor, capital, raw materials, like wages, the rent, the electric. If I was a coffee manufacturer, if I'm Dunkin' Donuts, the raw coffee. If I was if I made hamburgers, if the things for the meat cost went up, or the cost of tomatoes went up, anything if the prices go up. So the first one, we're going to put input costs increase, and then we're going to do input cost decrease. So this first one will show input cost increasing, and this one will show input cost decreasing. So I'll use a different color here. So if input costs increase, we will see that the supply will decrease. Okay, it will decrease. So there's an inverse relationship here. So as input costs go up, the supply decreases because they're going to have to spend more money on resources, so they're not going to be able to make as many as before. So if we look over here in the bottom right-hand corner, if input costs diminish, then they'll be able to produce more goods. Oops, there's a supply curve, and we'd see an increase. So once again, supply would increase. So we see an inverse relationship here between input costs and supply. So once again, we're talking about land, labor, capital, raw materials for producing a product. So that's I. T is my GI toes. That is technology. Now, for the most part, we're always going to see for technology, we're going to see a shift to the right. Pretty much every time. New innovations is going to allow us to produce more. Very seldom would a new innovation make a shift to the left, okay? Unless the government said, hey, we're going to get rid of innovation. We're going to outlaw assembly lines. Then we would shift to the left. But for the most part, every new innovation is going to increase productivity. Now, not maybe in the first hour, or the first day, or the first week, because there is a learning curve. So let's say we put in new machines at a factory. It may take a couple days or a week or two to figure out how to use that machine wisely. So it may take a while, but the new innovations should increase production pretty much every time. The next part of my GI toes is opportunity costs. Opportunity costs, okay? Now, this one's pretty interesting. Let's say we choose Nike, and they can produce basketball shoes, and they can produce spikes, right? Football spikes, basketball shoes and football spikes. And right here, this is the production possibility frontier, okay? And let's say here's the supply curve for basketball shoes. Here is the supply curve for spikes. Okay, and we have price, quantity, quantity. Okay, and let's say they're right here in the middle somewhere, producing right there, and that puts them somewhere like right here and right here. Now, I know we haven't talked about demand. Okay, so don't get, or well, I take that back. We have talked about demand, but we haven't talked about putting demand and supply together yet. But let's say the demand curve is here and we're entering basketball season. So we might see the demand for basketball shoes shift here, which means it's a slide up this supply curve, which means the price of basketball shoes rise. Now, if we look, they're going to have to make more basketball shoes, aren't they? Because there's been an increase in the quantity supplied of basketball shoes. Now, if we remember in our production possibility frontier, to make more basketball shoes, so we're going to have to slide to here, right? To make more basketball shoes, what are we going to have to give up? We're going to have to give up spikes. So here you go. Spikes decrease, and it takes us to here. So there wasn't a price change, but you could see where this falling part here would be this amount that they gave up, and this increase right here would be this increase right there. Okay, so if we went this way here on the opportunity cost curve, or on the production possibility cost curve, okay, so that one's a little more complicated. But when you think about it, where a firm wants to sell the product that is going to get them the larger price and profitability. So that is opportunity cost. The next one, E, is expectations. Now we're talking about future prices. So if they expect future higher, oops, let's put that as an, they expect future higher prices, right? If they expect future higher prices, over here, if they expect future lower prices. Oops. So if they expect future low, or if they expect future higher prices. So if they expect in 3 months the prices of their product are going to be higher, what will they do today? Well, they are going. Whoa! What just happened? What did I just do here? They will expect a shift. Whoa! What's going on here? Oh, there we go. We would expect a shift left. If they expect future higher prices, they're going to produce less today because they want to produce more when the prices are higher. So, in retrospect, when they expect future lower prices, they're going to produce more today if they expect the prices to fall in the future because they want to capitalize on the higher prices of today. So, that is expectations. The next one is S, and that's for the number of suppliers. So let's say Billy, I don't know, random guy, Billy. Oh man, my stiletto thing is not working. Why, oh why? This thing, I always complain about it, but I never get it fixed. All right, I always think it's a battery. All right, so let's say Billy wants to sell hot dogs, and this is the supply, the market supply for hot dogs, and Billy's the only supplier of it. But someone else enters the market and says, Jimmy wants to enter the market and sell hot dogs. So now, because of Jimmy entering the market, now Steve enters the market and sells hot dogs. So as more and more businesses enter the market to selling hot dogs, we see this shift to the right. But at the same time, if firms start to exit the market, we're going to start to see a shift left. So as the number of suppliers increases, the supply curve increases and shifts to the right. As number of suppliers decrease, we'll see the supply curve decrease and shift to the left. So if we take a look here, which of the following will cause the quantity supplied for milk to decrease? Pause it and check out the answers. So you should have came up with C, a decrease in the price of milk. Remember, a change in price leads to a slide on the supply curve. So this one, if we were to graph this one, and of course this stiletto pen, there we go. This one would, so it says, which of the following causes the decrease in quantity supplied? That would mean that the price fell and we slid downward to here. And that would be a decrease in quantity supplied. Okay. Here's another one. This is from the 2000 exam. It says the supply curve for automobiles will shift to the left. So a shift to the left. So that's a decrease in supply, a shift to the left, a decrease in supply. So that's the GI toes. So which would the answer be? Pause it, take a look. That would be answer B, an increase in wages in automobile industry. So you increase when you think of input costs, and we talked about that inverse relationship between input costs and the supply curve. So if you have to pay workers more, that means you have less money for raw materials. Therefore, you're going to produce less automobiles. So now we're going to take a look and we're going to try and we're going to practice some samples here. So in your notes, you have this, but we're going to go over 6 examples and you're going to tell me what's happening when it comes to the shifting of the curves. Okay, so let's take a look at the examples. And of course, we have to remember our GI toes, right? These are the determinants that shift it. So once again, this is just an example. If you want to pause it, take a snapshot. This is from the textbook of things that shift the curve. So we're going to look at hamburgers, and I want you to determine whether or not it's what the shifter is. Is it an increase or decrease in supply? And then which way the curve will go. So for hamburgers, so strange virus kills 20% of the cows. what do we know? The price of cows are going to go up because of this. They're scarce, right? So that's an input cost for hamburgers. So that's an input cost. This will cause there to be a decrease in supply because input costs went up, a decrease in supply, and a shift left. The next one, price of hamburgers increase. Wait, GI Toes. No, this is just a change in quantity supplied. This is just a slide down the curve. So there isn't, I should say, a slide up the curve. This isn't a shift at all. This is a slide. This is a change in quantity supplied, not a change in supply. The third one, government taxes burger producers. Government GI Toes. This is G. They put taxes on there. So this one, this increases taxes. This will cause the supply curve to decrease and shift to the left. New bun baking technology cuts production time in half. Wait, this is innovation. This is technology. And we know for the most part, this technology is going to shift it to the right, which is an increase in supply. Then we have the government subsidizes beef producers. The government's going to give the producers more money. So if they give them more money or give them money, that's going to cause that's the government involvement. That's subsidies. That's going to increase the supply curve and shift it to the right. And the last one is minimum wage increases to 20. So minimum wages, that's an input cost. And we know that has an indirect or inverse relationship. So if the input costs go up, we know that the supply curve will decrease and shift to the left. So here are the results. Okay, here are the results if you didn't have them already. So essentially, when we're talking about the supply curve, we have to understand the supply curve is the willingness and ability of a producer to produce a product. And as the prices go up, the quantity supplied goes up. As the prices go down, quantity supplied goes down. So we slide up and down, or we move along the supply curve. Then we said there's a shift changes, outside determinants that shift the supply curve right or left. Now, your book talks about five main factors, but I include six because I use the government involvement one. So, so I use GI Toes, government involvement, input cost, technology or innovation, future expectations of prices, and number of suppliers. Right? Was that nice? Technology? Yeah, I think that's all that. Number of suppliers. Okay. And remember, we can take individual companies' supply curves and add them to other individual companies' supply curves, and we get the market supply curve. So once again, the market supply curve is adding up all the individual firms' supply curves. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful with you. And until next time, the next video will be Module 7, which will discuss equilibrium, putting supply and demand together. All right, thank you and have a great day.